Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Please subscribe and keep watching more details. Angry correctional officer locked Julie Chrisley in cafeteria. Julie Chrisley saw her time behind bars get cut short thanks to a presidential pardon. However, the Chrisley Knows Best star has denied receiving any special treatment during her time in prison. Recently, she shared a haunting incident while in prison, with her family weighing in on the story. Savannah Chrisley recently hosted her parents Todd and Julie on her podcast. Julie Chrisley and her husband, Todd, were introduced to audiences through the USA Network reality series, Chrisley Knows Best. In 2022, however, the two were convicted of charges including bank fraud and tax evasion. For her part, Julie was originally sentenced to 7 years behind bars, which she was set to serve at the Federal Medical Center in Lexington, Kentucky. However, this past May saw Julie and Todd receive a presidential pardon. Since then, the Chrisley family has opened up about Todd and Julie's time in prison, including calls for reform. Recently, Julie herself recounted a harrowing incident while on her daughter Savannah's Unlocked podcast. During their conversation, Savannah noted her mother called her about the incident at the Lexington Center. She shared, "I will never forget at the very beginning, you called me, and you were all to pieces because that wanna." CO, referring to a correctional officer. Julie noted the officer was a food service worker and has since retired. Savannah then claimed the officer intentionally targeted her mother. An incident was recounted in which Julie was locked in a cafeteria. During the discussion, it was felt that Julie's experiences were harsher than Todd's. In turn, Julie shared, "He was just a miserable human being, he really was." Her husband Todd also claimed Julie was the only one getting locked up like that, adding that he would have filed a complaint. Todd and Julie also noticed that a variety of inmates tried to befriend prison staff. However, they felt, "They are not your friends, that's for sure." Comparing both of her parents' experiences, Savannah felt her mother endured harsher treatment than her father. Todd agreed, sharing, "I think that's the way that it is for women in general." In particular, it was noted that Julie's prison didn't have air conditioning, while Todd was able to get new AC units installed within a week thanks to a complaint. For her part, Julie mused that this could be because the building she was placed in was older than the one Todd was in. However, she also highlighted her center didn't have the option of getting new AC units since they never had them to begin with. The clang of the metal door echoed like a warning bell as it slammed shut behind Julie Chrisley. The fluorescent lights above flickered with a low hum, casting a sterile glow across the empty cafeteria. It was lunchtime no more, and the tables had been wiped clean. The other inmates had already filed back to their cells. Julie stood there, frozen, the tray in her hand still warm with untouched cornbread and watery beans. "Hello," she called, her southern accent sharp against the cement walls. "Is anyone still here?" No answer. She turned toward the door she'd just come through. It didn't budge. Locked. Panic flared in her chest. Not because she was alone. She'd grown used to solitary moments. But because she knew something wasn't right. Julie Chrisley, former reality star turned inmate, had gotten used to the cold routines of prison life. But this felt deliberate. And then she heard it. A low chuckle from behind the wire mesh window. Officer Ramona Steele. She was known as Steel Trap by the inmates, partly for her name, partly for her reputation. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a permanent scowl etched onto her face, Steele didn't take to what she called celebrity inmates. She believed prison was for breaking people down, not giving them special treatment. And she had made it her personal mission to ensure Julie Chrisley never forgot where she was. Julie stepped up to the window and knocked. "Officer Steele, is there a problem?" Steele didn't respond immediately. She just leaned against the wall with a cup of burnt coffee in one hand and a smirk curling her lip. Finally, she said, "Figure it's time you experience what it feels like to be forgotten." Julie's eyes narrowed. "Excuse me?" "Oh, don't give me that," Steele snapped. "You strut around here like prison's a spa retreat. Like you're better than the rest of these women. Flashing those veneers and quoting Bible verses, like Julie said firmly. That's not a crime." Steele scoffed. "You're not here for kindness. You're here because you lied, you schemed, and now you're paying the price like everyone else. But unlike everyone else, you've got people sending you organic snacks and scented lotion." Julie took a deep breath. This wasn't the first time Steele had confronted her, but it was the first time she'd gone this far. "You made your point," Julie said. "Now unlock the door." But Steele didn't move. "No, not yet. Let's see how much you enjoy that cornbread when you've got hours to think about who you really are." And with that, she walked away, leaving Julie staring through the glass as the hallway lights dimmed to save power for the evening shift. Hours passed. Julie tried to sit, to pace, to pray, but the cold cafeteria offered little comfort. She couldn't even find peace in the usual scriptures that brought her calm. She thought of Todd. She wondered if he was okay. She thought of Chloe, of Savannah, of Nanny Faye, and their long phone calls full of jokes and hope. But most of all, she thought about the deep injustice of her surroundings. She had never asked for privilege behind bars, only for dignity. She didn't want luxury. She just wanted to be treated like a human being. The vents rattled as the air kicked in. Somewhere far down the hallway, a guard's keys jingled, but no one came for her. Suddenly, the cafeteria door creaked open. It wasn't Steele. It was Officer Warren, a younger, kinder correctional officer who'd quietly earned the inmates' trust. He had sandy hair and tired eyes, and a badge that had once been polished with pride, but now dulled with overuse. "Julie," he whispered, "what the hell are you doing in here?" "She locked me in," Julie said quietly, standing. "Steele. After lunch." Warren looked stricken. "For how long?" "Over 5 hours now." Warren cursed under his breath and reached for his radio. "Control, this is Warren in Block C. Found inmate Chrisley locked in the cafeteria. Unauthorized hold. Releasing now." "Copy that," came the crackling response. He swiped his badge and pushed the door open. As Julie stepped out into the hallway, the lights suddenly flared back to full brightness. Officer Steele was waiting at the other end, her face twisted in fury. "What do you think you're doing?" she barked at Warren. "I'm doing my job," he said. "And last I checked, that didn't include locking inmates up in the cafeteria like stray dogs." "She needed to learn a lesson," Steele snarled. "She walks around like..." "She's still an inmate with rights," Warren cut in. "And this crosses the line." Julie stood quietly between them. She felt no triumph, only exhaustion. There would be consequences, for Steele, maybe, but likely only a slap on the wrist. Still, something had changed. The next day, whispers spread like wildfire. Word got around about what Steele had done. Some guards turned a blind eye, others whispered apologies in the halls. Even a few inmates looked at Julie differently, not as a celebrity, but as someone who had been mistreated and stood tall anyway. By week's end, Steele had been transferred to another unit pending investigation. It wasn't justice in the fullest sense, but it was a start. Julie didn't gloat. Instead, she took her tray at lunch the next day and sat with the women she'd usually offered quiet prayers for. She listened. She laughed. She shared her cornbread without flinching. Because sometimes surviving wasn't about being strong. It was about remembering your worth even when others tried to strip it away.